So I applied to one college and took all the tests, and I got accepted, and I go, oh, I guess I'm going to MIT, and I don't even know what that really means.
From Grindstone Media, this is Nebraska Made, a narrative journey through the lives of Nebraska's most inspiring business leaders. We unpack the intimate details of how our guests navigated obstacles and built their companies in pursuit of the good life. I'm JT Martin, and today's guest is Steve Kiene, one of the godfathers of Nebraska tech and the CEO of Ocuvera, a technology that's helping prevent deadly patient falls in hospitals. It might be fair to call Steve Kiene the Steve Jobs of Nebraska. He sees things differently, he makes things happen, and he doesn't care what others think of him. He's had plenty of success that's opened doors for him to move away from Nebraska and pursue greater ventures, but he remains adamantly loyal to his home state and his hometown of Lincoln, Nebraska.
I was born actually Bryan Hospital here in Lincoln, so I've kind of come full circle now. I used to say Silicon Valley was my second home because I spent more time there than I did here, but I've always considered this home and had opportunities to leave and just couldn't do it.
What were you like as a kid? Were you into computers or books, or what were you into?
I read a lot. We'd get the little scholastic book order forms at school, and my parents would order lots of books for me, and I'd bring them home and have them read that night. My mom would take me to the library. Anything I could get my hands on, I would read. Some of my earliest memories were going to work with my dad. He had his own small heating and air conditioning business, and I'd go to work with him on the weekends. And I think I learned a lot, from there, and got in the way, I'm sure, more than help, but just you learn things. And I think I would say the biggest thing that I picked up somewhere along the way was you can figure out anything. That if there's a problem, then okay, you can figure out how to solve it. And I mean, to this day, that's really what drives me, is finding problems to solve.
Yeah. Did you like formal education?
No, I didn't. I didn't like the classroom. I guess, what teachers I've talked to, for years later, it's like, well, you were just really smart and bored. So I saw my first computer when I was in summer school after 6th grade, I believe. It was an Apple II, which I've probably never heard of, but it's like, it was only text pretty much. And it was a science class that we used computers. And so I first sat down at it and used the science program. And I was like, wow, just my life changed there. It was like, this thing is amazing. And I ended up failing that class because all I did was sit on the computer and just kind of taught myself how to program from there. And that's then when school started again. Every minute I could, I got into the computer lab, which was just a storage room that had a few computers in it. And I really didn't care about school after that. I mean, in high school, and this is back in when people had tube TVs that broke down every year, or stereos that needed repair. Bring your stuff into the electronics room and Steve will fix it. And well, you start fixing everything for teachers, you get a little bit of slack on things. And so my grades weren't very good, and I was late a lot. But by the time I was a junior, I was working 60, 70, 80 hours a week as a software developer. What
were you working on software development wise at this time? Like what was there to code back then?
Yeah, well, the first program I wrote that I got any money for was a super, super, super simple accounting system, and that's way overstating it. But basically, I had a friend of mine, and his dad was an electrician, and so when he would do a job, he needed to send an invoice, and he wanted to keep track of whether people paid and how much money it was. So I just wrote a very, very simple way to print out an invoice on his printer and whatever. And I don't know, I think he paid me $50 or something, but that was, hey, here's a problem, I can solve it.
Did you end up finishing high school then at this point, or were you full blown into software development?
So yeah, kind of my junior year in high school, my best friend and I, a guy named Rod Magnuson, we started our own software company, which really was just like, hey, we want to write software and try to sell it. And back then, people would write software, upload it to these bulletin boards where people could download it. And if the people were so compelled and honest, they would send you some money. So we wrote a simple word processor that was color. And we made, I don't know, a couple $1,000 while we were juniors in high school, and had lots of people use it. There's a musician named Herbie Hancock, which he sent us money. I still have the letter from him handwritten, and I'm like, how cool is this, man? He was like, that was his heyday, and I was on top of the world, like, wow, how neat is this? And
you're a junior in high school at this time, right? So
yeah.
a couple $1,000, that's a lot of money.
Yeah. Hey, that could buy more computer equipment, and more Mountain Dew. And
so Steve is credited with coming up with the very first color word processor for the Mac, a software that they call Max Write. He has some money in his pocket, and it's starting to look like he has a bright future as a software developer. One would assume that the next practical step for Steve would be college.
So yeah, been junior in high school, and we're doing the stuff, and then, senior year, I'm trying to work more than go to class, and then you're supposed to do the kind of thing that seniors are trying to do now. Okay, got to go to college, and you're supposed to do all this and apply to these colleges and whatever. And I was like, okay, whatever. But so I applied to one college and took all the tests, and I got accepted. And I'm like, okay, well, I guess I'm going to MIT. And I don't even know what that really means, but long story short, turns out that because I worked so much and I didn't have very many classes, I didn't have enough credits to graduate high school. And so when the end of school rolled around, it was like, well, you need to go to summer school. And no, I think I'm just done with all this. I'm not going to do this. We're busy working on this big new software product. I'm just going to work on this. I'm not going to go to school anymore. And I've racked my brain trying to figure out, what did my parents say? Because they must have just...
That was going to be my next question.
What the hell are you saying? And so we worked in my parents' basement, and we had a guy working for us when we were in high school.
Oh
my parents' basement. So, and
I mean, it seems to have worked out for you. I guess it's maybe a good decision not to have gone to MIT. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think not going to MIT was a good decision. I wish I would have taken some classes at UNL. I think it set me back from a social standpoint hugely of how to work with people, but I think there's a lot of things I could have learned. I think it was just, I was lucky that there was something that I was pretty good at, that I was also passionate about, and that you could make money at.
So Steve passes up on an invitation to MIT, the world's top technology education, but he didn't seem to miss much, because just a few short years later came his next tipping point. He developed a software called Stacker that would take the capacity of a hard disk and would double the amount of data that you could store on it by compressing that data. And since hard drive storage was incredibly expensive back then, this was a big development. And it wasn't long before he found a company that wanted to acquire them.
Kind of, for me, the turning point came a few years later. So a friend of mine and I wrote a program, and we sold it to a company back in, I guess I wasn't quite 21, because I couldn't even rent a car, and they couldn't legally sign a contract, things like that. We flew out to California and pitched this product to a company, and long story short, they ended up buying it for a couple $1 million. We had agreed on the phone to a price, and they were gonna pay all up front, and there we go. And I told another company that I was negotiating with, it's like, I've decided to go another direction. And so 2 days later, they're in town. We go have a nice dinner the night before and all this fun stuff. And then the next morning we meet at our lawyer's office. They lay out the contract, but before they lay it out, I said, well, I just want to let you know that we've made some changes to the deal. Bottom line was half as much money paid.
That's a change, yeah.
Yes, so instead of it all up front, it was, we'll pay you half as earnout if you meet sales goals that we establish, and we'll pay you half of the half now. And I remember the feeling of, I think I literally could reach across the table and kill you. I mean, rage, like, you completely lied to me. That again, it's like, this is not right. You don't do this. And I'm very upset. But it was a good lesson of, you can't always trust everybody to do things the right way, especially people in California. Sorry, California, but they thought, oh, well, we can get away with this and doesn't make it right. Just that, but that was a kind of a turning point. Like, that's when my parents were like, oh, well, you're successful now. And I understand their viewpoint of, well, you made it, you got $1 million sitting in a bank. Okay, you're successful. And I remember taking the check to the bank, and first I'm like, I want to photocopy this. So he went down to Kinko's. I want to make a copy of this. Oh, you can't copy a check, whatever. Come on, and look at this kid going, what the hell? Where'd you steal this check from? And then, went down, deposited it. And then it's like, okay, well, now I got to finish the software. Money is one way to account for something. But, are you happy? Are you helping people? Are your passions being fulfilled? That's what defines success. Hey, yeah, you still want to buy stuff. I bought a new car and, put them, kind of the rest of it in the bank. And for me, it was a weird thing to be 21 years old, to have enough money that if I was careful, I really didn't have to make any more money the rest of my life. I could just do whatever I wanted to do. And I took a year or not a year, I guess a summer, and what do I want to do? And I think I want to move to Hawaii and just be a surfer, and maybe that. And kind of what it came down to, no, I'm doing what I want to do. I want to write software. And that's what I want to do. But one of the biggest turning points in my life came shortly after that in the course of working with that company and them shipping the product, I spent a lot of time out at that company, and they were, 200-300 people. They're growing and whatever, and they're a publicly traded company, which I didn't quite understand what that really meant. So in the course of being out there, and remember, I'm young, I'm naive, I'm 21. I got to meet lots of people at the company, and met someone who was a vegan, which I didn't know what that even was. And I'm like, wow, I'm really sheltered. He's like, you don't eat meat? What? And got to understand that. Okay, I get that. Oh, that's cool. Okay. Got to know a lot of people. One of the people was one of the tech support folks. He's in his 20s, had a new wife, just had a new baby, and it was kind of cool to get to know him. He just was a nice guy. And one of the trips out there, we're working on stuff and doing whatever, and the company had just released a quarterly report, and their earnings were down or whatever, and so they decided they needed to lay people off. And I remember I'm walking down this hallway, and he comes out of his office with a box of all of his stuff. He got let go. I literally said, this is bullshit. Literally, this is not right. You don't do this to people. And, it's great to have a simple, 21-year-old view, but I'm going to do this better. And I'm going to prove that you can build a software company and make a lot of money, which is easy. And you can build a software company and treat people right, which is easy. But doing both of those, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do it right, treat people right, and make money at it.
Yeah. Do you think that this is a methodology that's really kind of specific to Nebraska? Do you think that methodology of, okay, we're going to treat our employees better, we're going to put people over profits, do you think that could exist in Silicon Valley? I just don't know.
I think people in Nebraska are more content with their lives in general than people in Silicon Valley. And so they're willing to make the right compromises, the right trade-offs. And for me, really the epitome of doing what's right, and from the very, very core, is Tom Osborne. If you look back in your history, then 1983 Orange Bowl, going for two, and when 1 point would have been the national championship, going for one wasn't the right thing to do. Winning the game, trying to win the game, was the right thing to do. And sometimes you don't succeed, but
maybe we'll call this episode Steve Kiene, the Tom Osborne of Nebraska Tech. Do you think that's a fair assessment?
Oh, that is so far. I'm so far out of my league there. But to me, he's a good measure. He's never had any scandals. He's always, and I'm fortunate to serve on the board of teammates and get to interact with him. And he's the real deal.
So Steve learns his lesson about big corporation ethics, and he's on a mission to do right by the people around him. At this point, Steve's made a name for himself, and he has plenty of opportunities to sell out and leave Nebraska for a larger market, but he declines and he decides to stay in his home state and build yet another software company. The year is 1999, and the company is called eCellerate.
Then we decided in 1999, like, we're going to build another business. We're going to build an e-commerce business. So let me paint the picture a little bit. It's 1999. VC money is flowing like crazy. Companies like Netscape are going mad, and Yahoo and Silicon Valley and VC is just booming, and the internet is kind of just here. And so, hey, we're going to build an e-commerce company because, nobody's thought of that. There's already 50 others that are doing it, but we're going to do something different. So we built the technology, and we're kind of starting to sell it, and that's just kind of progressing, and companies are falling by the wayside. And then kind of the early 2000 hits, and the dot-com crash, and companies wiped out overnight, and dozens and dozens of e-commerce companies went out of business. But we built that company up, and we got to a point where it made sense to sell it. That was what I felt the best opportunity for employees. But all along the way, always told people, it's like, I don't really know how to do like stock options and all this stuff and whatever. But, when this company is worth something, then, everybody will get something from it. And I did mean it. And so when we got to the point of selling the company, and so I used the opportunity to negotiate a good deal, and we were negotiating, and the price was $17 million. I said, this isn't enough. It's not going to do it. I'm like, we got another offer, which was true. I said, so it's got numbers that going to have to be higher. And he said, well, give me some guidance. What do I need to be? And I said, well, 24 million isn't going to do it.
On the next episode of Nebraska Made.
And this was maybe 2 weeks after my first baby was born. I don't want to talk to him when I'm old and in my wheelchair and saying, oh yeah, I negotiated all these VC deals. That's what I did. In its unique way, that was the best day of my life.
I'm JT Martin, and this has been a Grindstone production. Grindstone is one of the premier production and marketing firms here in Lincoln, offering everything you need to grow your business in 2020, from video and podcast production to social media management and media buying. You can learn more by visiting grindstoneagency.com.